There are two sides to every story. The National Broadcasting Company presents the vivid drama of life itself, broadcasting's original program of mediation, the court of human relations. And now the man who has familiarized millions of people with the idea of mediation helped to make it a creative force in American life, A.L. Alexander.
So often, those who are active in civic and professional life look with impatience on the frailties inherent in human nature, the kind of attitude which views a person in panic or trouble as a kind of animated case history, either in a file or out of a file, the cold charity that may have efficiency but little regard for the feelings or the misery of a person. Now, it's proper that we become well acquainted with our mediators, that we get to know them. And I've always rejoiced that we are able to have as members of this board people of understanding heart who have a deep and abiding interest in the plight of their fellow beings. I want you to meet and know an official whose life has long been dedicated to the public welfare. As a judge, administering justice in those courts which come closest to the basic human condition. Long head of one of the largest prison systems in the world, with all that that involves. Commissioner of Correction of the City of New York, Honorable Anna M. Cross. I think it is clear that education isn't worth a great deal if it teaches people how to earn a living but fails to teach them how to live. Now, we have with us an educator who has that knack of making some of the hard things easy, and who believes that the function of education is to prepare us for this hazardous business of living. President of Adelphi College, Dr. Paul Dawson-Eddy.
Thank you.
Widely respected as a public official, whose association with these proceedings in one form or another goes back over a period of 20 years. Former United States Commissioner of Immigration, former New York City Commissioner of Welfare, former New York State Commissioner of Labor, presently the state's highest judicial officer in the delicate matter of appeals in the Federal Unemployment Insurance Administration, Honorable Edward Corsi. Judge Cross and gentlemen, whichever way this goes, I know you can bring a lot of peace to this little lady in her perplexity and in her disagreement with the daughter. Now, here is the complainant.
Well, don't you think, Mr. Alexander, that charity begins at home?
Charity begins at home?
At home.
Well, now, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, my daughter likes to help out people, and she does all she can without thinking about herself. She's doing all her work for people, and without thinking what is going to happen to her.
Well, now, suppose you tell us a little about the background of your daughter. What about her education?
My daughter was a wonderful girl, is a wonderful girl, and was a wonderful scholar. At the age when she entered public school, she used to bring me distinguished notes every month.
Yes. Now,
she
what
graduated
age?
high school at the age of 15, and she was appointed valedictorian.
Valedictorian?
Yes. And she at the age of 18, she graduated normal school to be a school teacher.
Now, what did she become?
Nothing. From all these people were thinking about her that something wonderful is going to happen to that girl because she was so wonderful in her studies, in her relations with people, and people were thinking an awful lot about her. And I thought the same thing. I was proud of her.
Now, what does she do with her life?
She just ruined her own life. Just went to nothing. It didn't
Well, what
work.
do you mean by that? What does she do with her life?
She's doing nothing with her life. She just wasted her life away.
For example, what does she do? Well, she helps people, doesn't she?
Of course, all she does is helps people.
That's all she does.
That's all she does.
Just help people.
She means to help herself too, but it turned out that her help was waste, and she gave away her help, and she was left with nothing.
Well, when you say that she helps people, give us an example.
Well, she had an acquaintances who wanted to become an artist. She wanted to go to Paris. She gave her $200, and $150 was due to her. It was $350. She gave it to that girl, and she never got back a penny.
And the girl went to Paris.
And the girl went to Paris.
Now, do you have another example?
Another example, she had another girl to whom she gave $550 in order to pay her back rent. And the girl, and she never got anything.
Yes.
And there's other examples that is
Yes.
too much to talk about.
Now, what does your daughter do now?
Right now, she's doing nothing. She's trying to raise money for a project, for a sort of an artistic project that I don't know what it is, but she is working on that plan.
And what is your position? Have you reached the end? You want it settled?
I would like, right now, where I reached the rope already, and I want to have this board to make a decision what this girl should do with her life.
What's going to happen?
I tried my very best to help her with my little education and common sense, but she doesn't listen to me.
Yes. Well, now suppose we hear from the daughter.
Mr. Alexander, I happen to be a person who believes in ideals. I believe in living up to the principle of sharing what you have with others. I believe in the golden rule. I think there are entirely too many people who are completely selfish. Helping others makes me happy.
But your mother says that charity begins at home.
I believe that when you lift up others, you lift up yourself. If someone that you help proves ungrateful and doesn't appreciate, that doesn't mean that you were wrong in helping.
Well, your mother states that entirely aside from anything else, that you haven't been very practical, that you're a dreamer, that you've lent money, that you've given money, that you've devoted yourself to various projects that haven't turned out too well, and that you're wasting your life, and she feels that this is an unfortunate and unjust thing to do.
I don't think that helping others is wasting your life. And if people can't return the money to me that I gave them, I have to accept it. But if more people wasted their lives really helping others, we wouldn't have the miserable world that we have today.
Well, now suppose we ask one more question of your mother, and then we'll hear what the board has to say about it. Your daughter is grown up. We're not talking now about the days when she was a little girl and you supported her, but since she's been grown up, what have you done for her in the way of giving her money?
I gave her $5,000, which I sold my home. $5,000 that I had my hard-working money, and I gave it to her to help along. $1,700 in bonds, in government bonds. I gave it to her to do whatever she liked to do.
Well,
And right now, I don't have any more.
well, where did you get the $5,000? We understand that you sold your home. Your home was left to you by your husband?
Yes.
And then where did you get the other
I
$5,000?
earned it. I was working very hard, and I earned that
Did
money.
you go house to house and get orders for a certain company?
Well, I did this type of work, and then I was doing needlework afterwards.
And you saved
And I saved
$5,000.
that money, and this is all. I had only one daughter. I lost my husband, and I had a son, and I lost my son.
Yes. Well, now, we're going to hear a little more from you now. Now, you have an amazed look on your face. Didn't your mother give you substantial money?
Yes, but I don't think any mention has been made of the fact that I earned considerable monies and was very successful at one time.
I
and
don't
that my
think
mother
we're.
worked with me.
I don't think that we're suggesting that you never earned any money. But isn't it true that over a period of time, you accepted $12,000 in cash from your mother, that you've lent and given away a considerable amount?
I didn't accept that much from my mother. I think that I did a great deal for my mother, too. I think that I helped her in many ways.
Well, I don't think that's the issue. I'm sure that in many ways you did wonderful things for your mother. But we understand, and this is very simple, that your mother is a widow,
Yes.
that she has no other means of support, and that fairly recently she gave you substantial amounts in cash. Isn't that true?
Well, it's not very recently.
Well, how recent?
Well,
5 years ago?
More than that.
But since you've been grown up?
Well, there were reasons for it. Some
Yes.
money was hers, some was mine. It was a mixture.
How do you feel about this, Judge Cross?
Well, the question is, what is she doing? I don't quite understand. Are you just sitting home and doing nothing?
No,
at
I
all?
work day and night.
You do work day and night, and you're
But
able...
it isn't anything for which I am paid.
I think
how do
that's
you-
clear, Judge Cross. Now, can we have your opinion on the issue?
Well, it would seem to me that if you're doing nothing, your mother is not only right, but she has good reason to worry. What's going to happen to you if she's not in a position to give you any more money? Has that occurred to you, that she is really seriously concerned?
Yes, but there is a kind of deadlock in our relationship that has created this circumstance. And I find that her lack of understanding of my principles and my work keeps me from earning the monies that I could that would more than take care of her.
Well, do we understand that you are blaming your mother because she doesn't have your principles and therefore you are in a position which is disadvantageous? All this board wants to hear and to settle is whether or not your position is reasonable in the light of your mother's complaint that you are a visionary and a dreamer and not doing the practical thing which would be helpful to yourself.
I think that what I'm doing is as practical as anything I could do.
And what are you doing?
I don't think that helping others is impractical, and I am...
Well, can you eat and pay rent
We've
and
managed
clothe
to do
yourself,
it. We've
doing
managed
nothing
to
but
do
just
it.
helping people?
Well, Judge Cross, instead of interrogating this girl, I think that we're at the bottom of the issue. I think what we want to do is to establish whether or not this is a reasonable philosophy on her part.
It's very evident that it isn't at all reasonable for anyone to simply say, well, I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping others. No one would question that it's a good motive, but you can't very well get along, and you can't help but agree with your mother that she has good grounds to be disturbed and that you ought to listen to her and at least put yourself in a situation that would be sound. It's an unsound situation to say we've gotten to a stage where I'm just going to sit and do nothing.
I'm not doing nothing.
Well, now,
Are you
would you
earning
tell us
anything?
once more, what is it that you're doing?
I am working on corporate plans to tie together the work of many years so that I can not only be reimbursed for what work, nonprofit work I have done, but carry through to fruition important work that is needed in America.
Well, are these corporate plans leading to some sort of business enterprise?
Yes.
And will this get you an income?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I suggest that at the conclusion of this conference, at the request of your mother, you submit the plans to the board, and I'm sure that they would be glad to be helpful in analyzing them, and you'd have 3 experts who could give you some helpful advice. Now,
I'd be glad.
eliminating the corporate plans for the moment, because we're thinking of a number of years of background, how do you feel about this, Dr. Eddy?
Well, the motivation, the desire to help people is perhaps the highest ideal and practical objective we can have in life. But there are many ways of helping people. Sometimes loaning them money that you really can't afford to loan, to go to Paris, which to study art, which is very desirable, doesn't really help that individual. If in turn that individual doesn't have enough responsibility to want to repay it, when you were teaching school, you were helping little children to learn. When you're doing this project or the other, you can do it in an organized way. You can do it through various established private and government agencies, having wider resources to apply to the needs of that person, better guidance, of more comprehensive understanding.
May
of
I
the
defend
Yes, please.
myself a little because I anticipated this. The friend to whom I gave monies to go to Paris was someone who had done many services for me, and at that time I could well afford it, and it was only sharing an inheritance of $400 that came unexpectedly from South Africa, where my nearest relatives are.
Well, Dr. Eddy, whether this came from South Africa or North Africa, I think that it is a waste of valuable time to split hairs here and discuss whether or not it was proper for her to do that. I think the issue is whether or not she has a logical approach to life in view of the mother's complaint. Commissioner Corsi?
Well, I'm a little disturbed by this matter because there are an awful lot of people in the fields of social work and public life and everything else who do precisely what this young lady does.
Well, shouldn't there be some foundation?
Now, of course, and I agree with Dr. Eddy, there must be a practical minimum at which you, while you're serving the whole of humanity, you look about a little bit to those who are near you, are also part of humanity. I think that probably this young lady has in the back of her head, along with her willingness to help people, a practical sense of eventually this helping others is bound to help herself and her mother. And I think that's what motivates her. It's merely, it seems to me, a difference of position between the two. The mother does not see the immediate returns of this help attitude. But I'm sure that what you're working out must have some place for your mother in the long run. Isn't that right?
Yes, it does.
But I'd like to know what is being done to have the mother feel that there's some security for her in these latter years of her life.
Well, I've done the best that I could for her. She has a home, she has Social Security, she has food, and now she is worried about me. But there is a long background that needs a clearance, and I think in the long run, all will be okay.
Well, as long as you can make her feel that way, I think that's the important thing. If you will recognize that it's as important for you to help your mother feel secure and have a sense of relationship that existed in the past between you and her, you will be doing good. And I think it's important, as she said, charity begins at home, to start in making her feel that there
I've
hasn't
tried
been
my
a
best.
Yes. Well, the ideal of dedicating oneself to helping others, certainly what could be better than that? And here this young woman has the board's complete blessing and endorsement, but obviously there is a basic obligation to establish a foundation to make this possible, according to our mediators. And for whatever reason, such a foundation simply does not exist. I sense a reluctance on the part of a couple of our mediators to in any way condemn a person who is doing good. But obviously, before a person can do that in any logical way, they must establish some sort of basis. Everyone agrees as to the good intentions of this young woman, but the board must agree with the mother that charity begins at home.
I do have another question to ask. My daughter...
Yes. Would you like a little water?
No, thank you.
Yes.
My daughter told me that she wants to marry a man outside of her religion. And I think that a girl with such an education and such an ability could find a man to marry someone within her religion.
Have you any prejudices of any kind?
No, I have no prejudice. I love all the people, and I get along with all the people. But it comes to religion and marriage, this is a different story.
You feel there are men of her own faith?
I feel that a man of her own faith, and for her to marry a man of her own faith and be happy.
Yes.
As myself is concerned, there's not much time left for me.
Yes. Well, now, suppose we hear from your daughter.
My mother knows very well that I can't be restricted by artificial barriers. Barriers of nationality and religion may be all right. But when it comes to matters of the heart, when it comes to love, I don't think there should be any barriers. one of the reasons that at my age I'm not married is because my mother has placed so much stress on marrying only within one's religion that I have felt that I should obey her. A few years ago I loved a man and wanted to marry him, but she objected violently because of a difference in religion. She said that she would go to my father's grave and take her life. I feel that her attitude has been a source of very unhappy interference.
That wasn't true.
Yes. Well, we don't know whether you...
Well, I can say one thing. There is not much time left for me. And I certainly would wish and hope that she would marry a man of her own religion and be happy. As this particular person she's mentioning is too much to talk, the reason I object it is not necessarily about marriage.
Now look, I don't think this board is prepared to pass on the excellence of a man who isn't here. But we understand that you're not a young person. You had a
I
son.
don't have much time to be here with her.
Yeah.
And I want to see her settled and be married and be a person to live like the rest of the world is.
And have a happy life.
Have a happy life.
Have a
this
happy
is
life.
all I want.
Yes, Commissioner.
Well, I think that's I think it's a practical proposition. It's much better that people marry within the same religion if it's possible. But religion is a personal matter, and we know from experience and observation that many happy couples in this great country of ours are happy notwithstanding different churches to which they belong. If you love the man, you love the man regardless of what his nationality or his religion may be. That's the fundamental issue here. I'm sympathetic to the mother's approach. It's a practical approach, and where you reduce the differences to a minimum, the chances of a happy marriage are probably better than where there are many differences. But if you love this man and you're sure that he's your man, well, you go ahead and marry him.
You agree with that, Judge Cross?
Well, not only do I agree with him, but I feel sorry for the mother and can fully understand her misgivings and her feelings. But there comes a time in the life of every mother that she has to recognize that her children have to make their own decisions, whether it's marriage out of the faith or whether it's following a pattern in life that they don't agree to. They have to do it. You know, there's an old saying, the bed they make, they're going to lie in. And the fact that you're arriving at that stage where you feel there are many years ahead should not be the thing that should cast a shadow over your child's life whom you want to be happy. You try to get her to see it your way. She now apparently has intelligence. She has a maturity. She'll have to make her own decisions, and you'll have to say, well, I had wished and hoped it would not be that way, but I hope she'll be happy through it.
Do you agree with that, Dr. Eddy?
Yes, completely.
Yes. Well, the board understands the sentiment of the mother and deeply respects her convictions, but it is well established that where an offspring of mature years has deep convictions of her own on matters of religious faith, what she wants to do with her life is, in this very personal area, is something for her to decide. Now, here the board agrees that the daughter is well within her rights in deciding the issue herself. The board feels that in this case, that would be altogether reasonable and fair. We bring to a close another session of the Court of Human Relations, extending our deep thanks to our distinguished mediators. In one of the noblest and most useful passages of Henry David Thoreau, he says, "It takes two to speak truth, one to speak and another to hear." Now, we do know that when people have quarreled, there remains a grain of anger, of suspicion. Distance grows between them. When a person thinks himself unjustly judged, he sometimes gives up the effort to speak truth, and misapprehensions become ingrained. You know, in any relationship, whether it be husband and wife, sister and brother, parent and child, the essence of love is mutual good faith and mutual understanding. The quotation goes, "It takes two to speak truth, one to speak and another to hear."